Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land. It is once again that time of the week. What time of the week is it? It's that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We figure out what's really going on. We drop truth bombs hither and thither. Call out the establishment on its BS. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, bringing you that solid, straight truth at the local, national, and international level. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM WIDR Kalamazoo or Western Michigan University. No matter how dope or insightful they may in fact turn out to be. So we got a lot going on in the show. About 6:30 or so, we're going to be having some guests on from the WMU chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. We've got a lot of stories to talk about. Dana Nessel is going after some polluters. That's good news. We also stopped some potential environmental damage right here in Kalamazoo. Much love to everybody who was at the zoning meeting last night. We've got some national stories that are kind of blood boiling. We've got some news about the new homeless shelter. A Michigan group on Facebook that's got a lot of right wing, just violent fantasize. It's gross. And we're going to talk a little bit. There was a debate last night. I guess anybody who follows progressive politics in the United States, y'all might know, Mom and Dad got in a fight. And yeah, it'll be diving a little bit deeper into all that stuff too. But we're actually going to kick off the show. We've got an interview. Also associated with, if you didn't tune in last week, I'd highly recommend check it out. We interviewed Lucy Lucas and Jacob Mabry from Project X, and they laid it down, talked about their project for a good long while, and we're going to have a follow-up here with another one of the participants in Project X, which, again, just a refresher, is a really great way to teach up young organizers here in the city. So I guess, Lawrence, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to you, and then we will introduce our very special guest. Full disclosure, I am also a part of Project X, and we have another friend of mine, someone who is also a part of the project. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, my name is Jessica Ivy, and I'm kind of the alumni engagement person for Project X. Hey. Outside of just working with Project X, my homie here is a very talented artist, and I want to plug this. I want to plug shameless plug. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. Before we get into the Project X stuff, you have a project that you have coming out pretty soon. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah. So I'm affiliated with Last Gasp Collective, which is a local band and label here. We're pretty dope. If you don't know us, you should Google us.
Absolutely.
Check us out.
Absolutely.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, so the band in the last year or so has kind of started becoming a label and just, full entertainment conglomerate where we're booking shows for ourselves as a band, but also the individualized acts within the band. So this summer I kind of spent every day working on my own solo project. At the core, it's a breakup album, but it's also my first project ever. So there's a little bit of dancing between that subject matter and just general life stuff or personal battles that have just kind of shaped who I am as an artist, the kind of covers that I would perform up until now that I have, original material. Experimenting with a lot of different things sonically, some hip-hop elements. I've always been a super eclectic listener, and because Last Gasp Collective has so many musicians of different styles and just resources, I was able to really just play around with some cool sounds and some different like ways to go about R&B.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited. It's called First Time, and it'll be out real soon.
I want to interject real quick as somebody who is at least somewhat involved in like the music scene in Kalamazoo. Last Gas Collective is a treasure.
Yeah.
They are a Kalamazoo treasure.
Thanks,
if
dude.
you have not had a chance to see them, what are you doing with your life? Climate change
One.
will kill us all. Go see
Right.
Garbage.
Dog,
Yeah,
dog.
Go hear some music. in the
Dog,
meantime.
no, I'm gonna say just in full transparency. The first time I saw Last Gas was a few years ago because my homie Ashley was singing with them, and my other boy was on the keys. And
Man, shout out to Ashley and John.
yeah, dog, Andrew,
everybody.
hey, dog, I'm not
All
gonna.
the OGs, man.
Dog, the first time I saw them perform, I was just like, oh my god, why am I not a part of this? It's amazing.
And it's a crazy evolution to now.
Yeah.
Too. Like up until this October when we released our album, you didn't really know Last Gasp unless you had heard us live. So this last project we just released is called Seen Not Heard. It has 20 songs on it. Like it's a lot of music, but like other than, you know, Agape and like Small Town and Moral, like just the singles or like smaller projects from, you know, 2 years ago, like our sound and even membership has just changed so much since then. So it was really cool to just kind of produce something fairly quickly.
Yes.
If we started, you know, at the top of the year, like we cranked out those songs in like 2 months and there we were. And then mine was done. And then now Jay's like, man, we humping over there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so that was a shameless plug. Please,
woo.
yeah, yeah, that was a shameless plug. But okay, now Jess, you said at the top of the show that you are the outreach coordinator for Project X.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about personally, what does Project X mean to you as an individual and your role in the group?
Yeah, so Project X, I kind of came about, and I was working at Wesley Foundation at the time, which is just where a lot of Erase things are held.
Shout out to Erase.
Yeah, word to Erase. Their relationship with Wesley kind of grandfathered me into the local organizing and social justice kind of conversation in Kalamazoo. I was just getting into my African American Studies minor. I just met Michelle Johnson and Denise Miller and like Candace and Yogi, you know. So
right.
I'm just now getting into the fold, you know, intersecting art and social justice, all of that. And Project X came with the app like a couple of months after I had done my Erase training, that 2.5 day. Like it was really intense, it was emotional, it was like all these things. And then Project X presented itself as this platform to really like get on the ground level and do some of this work and learn the how when it comes to dismantling all this stuff. So I was a program, well, I guess I was just a cohort member at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I was just a part of that community of people. I think there were like 10 or 15 of us. You didn't really feel the separation between like the organizing committee and the cohort.
Right.
It was really just a great community of people, fairly diverse in a lot of those ways too, not just racially, but like just this great group of people that really were here because we have that common ground of wanting to learn more and do more with the how. So after that kind of year-long program was over, after we did our project, took some pictures, kept in touch, Jacob and Luke asked me to be on the organizing committee. So my role now is just kind of connecting with alumni and partners that we have reached and connected with at all in the past. Project X is maybe 4 or 5 years old at this time.
Yeah.
And through those 2 separate years of like programming, so many people have been, you know, touched, whether it's just by word of mouth or someone wrote a grant on our behalf or someone came to the graduation and just knows some of the work we do. Again, our connection with Erase, that has just been a beautiful network of people, locally and regionally. Like it's just, we understand the value of the people that we know, what that looks like for direct action efforts, what that looks like for our incoming cohort when it comes to facilitating those lessons. Like people in the community have specialties in some of these social justice, these hows, and we don't want to just recycle facilitators just because we can. Like, there is value in connecting with the people that have been changed by Project X, whether it's just coming to an event or like really being a part of the programming. Like, we realize we've really given some people some great tools, and if anything, just a great like network of people locally to call on. So yeah, I love PX, and I'm excited to see what the cohort is gonna be. Got an application out. It's almost closed, but not if you don't apply.
Yes, go make sure you apply. Make sure you apply. Applications are still available. I think we'll be keeping them open until the 17th to 18th. So if you want to, please go to the website, go to the Facebook page, all that wonderful.
You can email us.
Yes, email us all
kalamazoo.project.x at gmail.com.
Right. Email, text, carrier pigeon, like, smoke signal. We want
to see you there.
Right.
College students, non-college students, just anybody that wants to learn the how.
Yeah.
Wants a community of people.
Yeah, I will say too, like, it's really invaluable to have programs like that because, the how, that's always like the big question, even I think one of the big, I wouldn't necessarily even say failures, but I think something that's lacking is, I'll see a lot of lefty anti-capitalist groups, lay on, it's like, here's the theory you need to read, the analysis, the history and stuff. But, like, when it comes to, like, nuts and bolts, it's like, okay, so how do I actually organize people? Yeah. It's like, whoa, it depends on the material conditions of where you're at. So that's not helpful.
It's getting down and actually learning how to put your wisdom into action. Like, and I think for me, that's one of the main reasons why, again, full disclosure, because I'm also part of Project X. For me, I think that's one of the things why I'm continually drawn to being a part of it. It's one thing. What was the old saying? It's one thing to understand that a tomato is a fruit. It's another thing to put the tomato in a fruit salad. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I'm saying? Like, in Project X is the one that's like, nah, son, that's not how this goes. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the role of Project X in that scenario. I think that for me, wanting to actually be a part of the change that we talk about all the time, especially on this show, and moving with people who are like-minded and having conversations with people who are not, I think that's the crux of it for me, why I want to continue to do it.
Totally.
But just so you were part of. You talked about how you were a part of the Wesley, you were with the Rays, and then you got into Project X. What's one of the from that tenure? Because from your tenure,
it was an era.
Yeah, well, that era. What was something that was that really left? What's something that really left a mark on you, or what's something that you saw and you was like, okay, now I need to move. Mm-hmm. Now I need to do something. What was that moment?
It's funny that you say that because I very vividly remember learning and understanding capitalism. So, like, in the Erase training, I heard it a lot, as a buzzword. And of course, I've heard it in a general sense, comparatively to, communism and whatever other, economic systems. Right. But, like, man, I was not at all prepared for the connection of poverty systemically, generational poverty to capitalism, like that entire system working to oppress people of a certain demographic through a financial system that we are all kind of enslaved to, because if you don't participate in capitalism, you kind of can't survive. Like, that whole connection of, oh no, this is about money first and foremost, that completely knocked my socks off. I was kind of like, what? Whoa, okay, so that's my government. Okay, like a whole bunch of light bulbs went on when I think it was Jaquise talking about, what is capitalism and how does it function. We were like reading excerpts from Pedagogy of the Oppressed, but man, really getting that light bulb aha moment of, oh, this is about money. Yeah. Okay, that's why it continues. So
that's really like one of the core things that I think it doesn't get talked about enough. That even like liberals and like right-wing reactionaries in this country, there is no systemic analysis. That's really part of the core problem.
Yeah.
Oh, and just as a side note, love Jaquise. She was like one of my personal Jedi masters.
Love you, Jaja.
Starting to like get to go down the path. It's like,
So you were Baby Yoda? That was
no. I was Luke Skywalker. We've got Jaquise. We have to fight the capitalists.
Jaquise is a genius, man. Love Jaquise.
I wish I would have been more involved around that time. I wasn't. I was off doing my own thing, but okay. So from there, and then that got you. So who brought you into Project X? Well, like was it
Probably a staff member or 3 at Wesley. I had heard of Project X. Oh, you know what it was? I'm sorry, Candy, for even uttering anything. It was completely 100% Candace May. I'm sorry. I love you, sis. It was Candace May. It was all Candace May. Dang, I'm sorry, sis. It was Candace May. She was like the coordinator at the time. So she was doing a lot of the heavy lifting for like promotion. So I might have heard of it just because I knew she was already a part of it. She was already a close friend of mine. She used to work at Wesley. Like, Candace is a person that's super helpful for my like projection of the future. She's like 0.2 steps ahead of me in age. You know what I mean? So just watching her life experiences, especially her story in Kalamazoo when it comes to like social justice and everything, like I was really able to just kind of model after many of the lessons she had to learn the hard way. So I kind of had that that lens going in of what to look out for in organizing, things that could discourage you, things that will work to dismantle the group that you're trying to mobilize with, like all those different nuanced but just very insightful lessons I got from Candace, because she brought me in already. It was just like, you need to do this, it was a really tough time in my life too, like just a turning point where I really needed kind of to catapult and change a lot. So yeah, definitely Candace. Sorry, Ken, I love you. It was totally you. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Okay, so I mean, the cohort is going to be starting soon. What is something that you are the most excited for, like going forward with the next steps of the group?
Yeah, man, the cohort was just such like it's that warm feeling that we all have when we're all together. So like we've already achieved that on a couple of levels with the current organizing committee, but the cohort, like a lot of these jokers don't know each other at all, and some may, so coming into that room of like, okay, we all agree on something supposedly, like what's this gonna look like, you know what I mean? Like taking that sense of wonder and really shaping it into solidarity and like actual support for each other as people, as humans, and as entities of their demographics, whatever they may be, I can't wait for them to be there for each other like they will be. Like it's unforgettable, the things that you learn and the things that you do together, like the travel. It's great being a part of, but like when you look back of like who you gained with you, can't wait for them. I going over some of the stuff that like the programs that we have coming up, some of the classes that we have coming up. I can speak for speaking for the stuff that we have discussed with Project X, the lesson, the class, the fact that we are actually also paying people for their time, I think is it's huge, man. Because I mean, it's not that there's a lot of. It's not like it's a real rich organization. We're not. It's still a nonprofit, but at the same time, people being but we're paying. But we're still paying people for their time. We're still valuing people's time and energy with being a part of it. You know what I'm saying? And that, I think that's something that I know a lot of groups don't do that. A lot of groups don't do that, and I think that it's wonderful that we are. But also, just from the some of the speakers who were planning on having to come and talk about race and inequality when it comes to education, or when it comes to banking, when it comes to medical system.
Yeah,
literally, you name it.
Yeah, dog, man, the stuff that we got coming up. Okay, so I know that we ain't got a lot of time because we only said that I know we gotta get you out of here because you are definitely a
I'm
big
famous and all, you know.
Man, yeah, we gotta get you out of here.
I gotta get home to my bed. She's waiting for me.
Nah, you gotta get back to the studio, man. I gotta get there so I can sing my ahs and oohs in the background.
Lawrence knows I love him. Just y'all on the airwaves better know, like Lawrence. I love this man. Because I came straight from work. I'm a preschool teacher, Lawrence.
I know.
So just so everybody knows how much love is right here.
Okay. So that's what I said.
Thank you for your service.
Yes. That's what I said. We gotta get you out of here. Okay. So what's one last thing before we get you out of here? What's one thing that you want to get everybody who's listening, who's going to hear this? What's one last thing you want them to get stamped on their mind before you get out of here? What is that?
I mean, I'll just leave you with some Malcolm X, of course.
All right.
If you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything. Something like that.
Yeah.
You don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
A man who stands for nothing. But man, like I had to fix a little bit, Patriarchy. Love you, brother Malcolm. But yeah, if you, people, men, women, children, non-binary folk, everybody, people, if you don't stand for anything, you don't have a cause, you will fall for anything that they tell you, and they will tell you whatever.
Yeah. As Malcolm, and to paraphrase something Malcolm said, to add on that, if the media will have you hating the oppressed and loving your oppressors.
Yep.
And what we do is make sure to give you the right information so you know who is and who's not worth fighting and being allies and accomplices with. So yeah. Well, thank you.
People.
Yes, thank you, Jess. Thank you. Love you. I love you so much. And yes, please
apply for Project X, please.
Yeah.
We really need to see you there.
Yes.
Come on, you want to.
Yes, exactly.
It's highly recommended from all the Hoodrat crew to you.
Yes, absolutely. I know that we're about to take a break. We got some more interviews that got coming up, and we also got to break down the debate. We got so much stuff we got to talk about, and we ain't got enough time. Just thank you again, and I know
thank you guys for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on.
Right.
And we'll be joined in just a minute. A few folks from the WMU College Democratic Socialists of America. They're going to be talking about some of the organizing projects that they're working on this semester. Plus, I don't know, Lawrence, it's been a really boring week in progressive politics. So, I don't know what we'll have to talk about.
Oh man, dog. It's not like, Iran's is about to sue America for killing Jamal Khashoggi. It's not like,
Everybody be cool.
It's been a normal Wednesday. It's a normal week. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think we'll dig into that one super deep unless you'd like to.
Man,
but
we'll see.
Dog,
I did want to just bring up. So yeah, Iran is literally taking the United States government to court in the International Criminal Court for assassinating Soleimani. And that's interesting because typically, quote-unquote, first world countries do not have charges brought up against them when they do war crimes. It's just kind of like, you broke international law.
It's cool.
Right. The NASDAQ is up 10 points. Like,
Trump screwed it up. Like, he lost our military-industrial complex's bathroom pass to do war crimes because he was just so outlandish about it.
Oh my God! Like that story's crazy. I think the best story of the day, personally, that I also want to talk about is what's happening in Seattle with their anti-corruption legislation that they're passing, which will freeze, will basically take money from major corporations and corporations that are mostly owned by foreign investors, and separating them and not letting them letting them have access to politicians. This is also going to cut out corporations like Amazon and Google from putting money into the local politicians in the area. That is a fantastic story that we have to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
yeah,
I could go further into, but yeah, let's go ahead and go to break. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, your only source for political revolution.
Voting is important. From deciding Kalamazoo's best drunk food to picking the fan favorite for Wider's Battle of the Bands, voting allows people to voice their opinions and change their world. To vote for offices such as mayors, senators, and the president takes a little more than a link to a Google Forms survey. Before you vote, you have to register. This can be done in person, by mail, and, in many states, online. For more information, you can point your favorite web browser to vote.gov.
Lawrence.
Hello, everyone. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Again, it's great to have Jessica from Project X. Talked also a little bit about Last Gasp Collective. Right now, we are joined by a couple members of WMU's chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. We're joined by Tyler and Grant, right?
Oh, Gabe.
Gabe. Sorry, there was something with a G.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was kind of being cheeky earlier. There's a lot of national stuff going on. I'll let you guys kind of pivot the conversation. If you want to start talking about some of these national stories that are related to democratic socialism and progressive politics, we can. I know y'all got some local stuff that you're working on too. So I'd say like player's choice.
Yeah.
Well, we're just talking about it a little bit, so I don't know. You want to jump into the debate talk?
Yeah.
I mean, Bernie's probably like the biggest news in like democratic socialist circles right now.
Oh yeah.
With I guess the primaries like literally Iowa's in like 3 or 4 weeks. Like
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
And then March 10 in Michigan is the primary. So, you know, you can we got to get people out to vote.
Yeah, it makes a big difference because I think right now we're looking at Bernie in a three-way tie with Biden and Buttigieg. So, and obviously none of us want either of those guys.
For Iowa, at least.
Yeah, for anything. but yeah. So really, every little bit helps here. And I know I said I was going to wait till later to talk about it, but on that note, I'll jump into we got some phone banking coming up on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, next Tuesday.
And
the 21st.
The 21st. I got an exact time for you real quick.
Yeah, it's in room 212.
Yeah, room 212. And that's going to be from 7 to really, we're just going to run for as long as we can and calling into Iowa for Bernie. And like I said, every little bit helps. So
yeah, it's really easy how it's set up too, because all you'll need to do is just bring a laptop and a phone, and on the Bernie's website they have like a system where it tells you what number to call. Right. And it tells you what to say, what not to say.
Yeah, even if you don't want to work directly with us at the DSA here at Western, if you download the Burn app on your phone, you can just learn a whole lot of information about the campaign, and you can learn how you can contribute on your own just through that app. It's really useful.
Yeah, Bernie's grassroots campaign is insanely strong. Like last time I checked, he had 2 million different individual donors. When no other candidate had more than 1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd also just like to mention too, for all the listeners out there, especially some of the younger people who maybe haven't, dipped their toes into the water of organizing. I organized a lot in 2016 and 2015 around Bernie Sanders' campaign, and it really taught me so many core skills that you can really apply to all kinds of community organizing, and especially phone banking. It's a very kind of low stress, high yield activity that you can engage in, and it'll help bulk up your skills. One of the things that I tell people, you just ran for city commission and all this stuff, and it's like, how do you get like that charisma or confidence or whatever? And it's like practice, because I assure you, I'm actually a very socially awkward introvert, but it's like, I don't know, when we're talking about this political stuff or that kind of radical organizing, it's like D&D. It's like plus 10 charisma. Yeah, you do that. No, even if you're really shy, just give it a shot.
Yeah. And then on top of the grassroots organizing, one thing I think Bernie campaigns that's a big asset is the online presence and the social media stuff, because it's allowed Bernie to stay not as he's not attacking other candidates. Everyone online, when Warren says some BS, or any other candidate or the media asks Bernie a ridiculous question, you get people online, social media sharing everything, makes Bernie get to seem more nice to the voter who hasn't committed yet. Right. So I think that's been a strength of his campaign so far too.
For real. A prime example of that would be what just happened with the debates, with them accusing Bernie of saying a woman couldn't be president, where the Warren campaign had to literally summon that up out of basically nowhere and throw it at Bernie just as a Hail Mary. But we the people who support Bernie, we know him as a person, and we know his track record. Mm-hmm. And we know, back in the 80s, he was saying women could be president. And he even pushed Warren to run in the 2016 election.
Yeah, that is important to note. Basically, the reason that he ran was because Warren didn't in the last one.
Yeah, Bernie and... Oh, sorry.
You're saying that the framing from the moderators wasn't good in the debates? Asking Bernie Sanders that you have the same ideology as the Ayatollah and why we shouldn't get out of our...
CNN should not be allowed to moderate these things. And honestly, watching all these debates, and I had to skip the last one. I just watched the highlights and heard about it afterwards. But just listening to these debates after debates, it's really made me realize why nobody really watches them.
It's also
Bernie's the only one up there speaking like a normal human being.
Please explain the logistics behind your baby eating program. Yeah. Excuse me.
What do you think about the baby? Here's the thing, and I'm gonna be objective, because I watched the debates, and before we even get into everything, there were people who did have pretty decent substantive answers. I'm gonna say like Tom Steyer had some pretty substantive answers that I thought were decent. Do I think that he should be president? No, because he bought his way to the stage. Like I don't think a billionaire that bought their way to the stage should be president. But he did have some pretty substantive answers last night that I thought was decent. Also, and I hate to say this, because we were talking about it earlier. When it comes to the two progressives on like eyes on the prize, guys. Joe Biden still leads nationally. He's still the biggest threat in this race. But the fact that you have two people who are to the left of Biden, which is Sanders and Warren, having this ridiculous catfight, that their camp, that the Warren camp started, it hurts our movement, even though their supporters are, she has more affluent, college-educated, older white supporters. His is more undergraduate.
Honestly, that story got me a little. It got me more than the private conversation story did. No, I'll explain. Just let me finish real quick. Just because the fact of the matter is, Warren's camp took it as like a vicious personal attack. It was a very mild thing. Again, a lot of people say it came out of a low-level Slack conversation, and it's true.
No. I can say from firsthand experience, though, when in the Sanders campaign, when you go through all the online training stuff, they specifically tell you not to attack other candidates. Like, that's Sanders' whole mindset. Like, he has been way too light on the other candidates. The only candidate he's attacking is Joe Biden, which is smart strategy. Honestly, it's working out for him because he's been surging.
Well, the thing is, also we have to also take into consideration that that same criticism of Warren supporters are white and well affluent. These are the same things they said about Bernie Bros back in that Hillary Clinton was trying to say about Bernie Sanders back in 2006. The problem is, when you look at the actual data and statistics, it's true that her supporters are the same type of supporters that support Mayor Pete. The people who have the more closer coalition is Biden and Bernie when it comes to the level of diversity in people in lower income, lower educated voters. The thing is that when he made the statement of she's not going to turn out more voters, it was kind of true.
I don't think he didn't even say it though.
He didn't say it. He didn't say it, and it's
a non-controversy.
So, and I understand from the standpoint of we're supposed to have a ceasefire, we're supposed to be allies, and this is what you're saying. This is something that y'all are saying. Okay, that looks a little shady. But you don't return fire by saying, "Yo, I'm going to leak a private conversation that I had with you a year ago that says that basically you're implying that I'm sexist." When Joe Biden literally 2 days beforehand said, "Hey, I don't gotta deal with sexism. That makes me more electable." That is sexist.
He's the only one saying that, and
he said the quiet part out loud.
Exactly. And on the point of the different coalitions, I would like to say on air a very important point that every Bernie supporter should be aware of is the fact that every single person who supports Elizabeth Warren is going to vote Democrat no matter what.
That's true.
That's just a fact. So we don't have to win any of them over. We have to worry about other people's coalitions, like you were saying, like Biden's.
Independent voters, too.
And independent voters, and these people who already aren't participating in electoralism, because that's really who Bernie is after, the people who, up to this point, have not participated in politics. That's who we should be worried about. And on the note of catfighting with Warren, I would say that it hasn't even begun yet. Or I don't think it is going to begin, because Warren is the only one who's thrown a grenade into this, and I don't think Bernie's going to shoot back at all. I don't think he has to.
I disagree with that. I do hope he shoots back, because with Bernie, this is like someone who he had said is like friends, right? And she's making a smear that's exactly something you would see on like CNN. Like you could
or
see
MSNBC.
Yeah, and Warren is supposedly above that at least. Like she's not. Maybe she's not a progressive like Bernie is, but she's not MSNBC, CNN level bad. But she's going on that level out of nowhere and doesn't attack Biden at all at the last debate. You know, she doesn't attack Biden for the sexism comment that he actually made publicly, and so I'm worried about like, is Biden like promising Warren a position in his administration? There's a potential. Hillary did that with her in 2016.
I mean, that is facts. Hillary did do that, and Warren did not back anybody until the end of the election, which is facts. But I do disagree with the fact that Warren is not the statement about Warren not being progressive. She is a progressive.
I didn't say that she's not. I said she's not a progressive like Bernie.
Yeah, she's the second best progressive in the Senate. So in my opinion, but at the same time, when you saw the cat fight, when Warren came back and was like, "I'm the only person that's beat a Republican in 30 years," and
Bernie did 29 years ago.
Yeah, and Bernie literally said, "Dog, I also beat a Republican." And
she's lied to our face several times.
No. Again, this is where your staffers and your planned punches. This when you plan your attack and then it gets countered by facts, and then you saw the reaction because she was like 90s and he's like, that's why I beat a Republican. I beat an Republican. So your statement's not true, but it's cool. We're still friends. The thing that bothers me the most when it comes to just the coverage, just overall, was one. Obviously, we talk about all the time with the debates that the moderators framing up their questions were absolute garbage, and there were some certain people who were getting very nicer questions, and it wasn't a debate between the candidates. It was a debate between the moderators and Bernie, or moderators and it was moderators versus the candidates, more specifically moderators versus Bernie. The question from Wolf Blitzer still was the worst question of the night, and I'm sitting here like, Wolf,
which one are you referring to?
I'm talking about the one with Iran, the Iran question, when he literally compared Bernie to the Ayatollah, and I'm sitting here like, brother, what is wrong with you?
See, that's what I think. It's so bad that I think it's going to help Bernie, because I think the same thing happened when Fox News started going against Trump back in 2016. Yeah. Fox News started pushing Jeb, Rubio, then Kasich, and all the Republican voters were like, well, this is BS. You know, Trump is the one who seems to have our back. You know, I think Democratic voters are going to look at that, because on Twitter, literally everything is trashing Warren, even on places that are usually kind to her.
I wish there was like some kind of rule that you had to disclose the finances behind debates. I just imagine it's like Wolf Blitzer asking that question. And by the way, that question has been brought to you by Lockheed Martin.
Right.
Yeah, I saw an ad during the debate that was like. The ad literally was by this insurance company coalition, and it was saying single payer and public option both would cost too much. And it was basically a Joe Biden ad.
No. But here's the thing though, they asked that question. They played that ad, but before they played that ad, what was the question that they asked to Bernie? Bernie, your healthcare plan will bankrupt the country.
Yeah.
Why are you pushing a plan that will bankrupt the country? That was the framing that they were using when. Study after study has shown that Medicare for All will save Americans more money. And this is where I agree with y'all that I think Bernie needs to be more aggressive. Bernie should say, y'all are not worried about me bankrupting the country. You're worried that I'm going to bankrupt the companies that are that you're running ads for during these commercial breaks. Yeah. And I'm sorry to tell you that I'm going to. I'm sorry to tell you, but we're going to cover all Americans. If those companies have a problem with it, they can have a different business. This is America. You know what I'm saying? But the thing that bothered me, I think that was one of the other things that bothered me. One, the story that came out with Mayor Pete. That the Root and TYT came out with, talking about Mayor Pete's corruption in South Bend, didn't get brought up. Not at all. They talked about Mayor Pete when it came to him connecting to black voters, but they did not bring up that story at all.
No one really went after Mayor Pete last night, and he's basically tied with Bernie in Iowa.
They gave him one tough question that was about race, but they did not talk about the story about his tenure or him firing the first black police chief. I mean, demoting him, trying to fire him on behest of his racist police officers and donors, and the tapes that he's unwilling to release, saying that. Which he fired the whistleblower, the woman that was the whistleblower that listened to the tape, saying that white people are going to be happy. The police are going to be happy when white people are in charge again. Again, this happened under his tenure. He has the power to release the tapes. He's choosing not to. Yet the mainstream media has not covered that story at all. And
I was just gonna I totally agree with everything you're saying, and I just wanted to double on that by saying Pete Buttigieg is by far far and away the slimiest person on that debate stage.
Oh, yeah,
in every sense. I mean, his whole career that he parades around and says should be a reason to vote for him, it's literally firing people so a company has a better bottom line, right? That's it.
It's the same thing. And I'm sorry to say this. It's the same thing with Deval Patrick as well. And as the only and as a black person, the black person that's in this conversation, it bothers me when identity politics is being used to weaponize bad ideas against minorities, and against people who are disenfranchised. You have Mayor Pete, who during his tenure demoted black police chief, fired the overwhelming majority of black police officers in a city that has 26% population of black people. You have police corruption and misconduct being done, and he does not back up his citizens. He backs up the police union and the police officers that are part of the corruption, while still taking money from wine caves. So he has shown that he will sell out the American people he will sell out the American people instead of defending them, depending on how big that check is going to be.
And also on foreign policy, Mayor Pete's an absolute disaster. In the last debate, last night, he was saying some anti-war stuff on Afghanistan and Iran, but I think he's completely lying, and he's got the most donations from ex-state officials in the CIA, and he's totally backed by the State Department in that respect.
It's very interesting you bring that up, because this particular debate, something that you saw a weird sort of consensus around, and I don't think I've seen this since maybe the Al Gore election, but the idea that all of the candidates up there, to some extent or another, we're talking about de-escalation of the endless wars. Which now again we've had Democratic nominees who have talked about it before, but don't get us wrong. But it's very interesting to me that in the shadow of the crazy way this year started with Iran, you suddenly saw a stage where even Biden, to his credit, was talking about de-escalating these wars. Now, granted, his platform is still trash, but I'm just saying I think it was very interesting to see at that debate how everybody kind of shifted just a little bit to the left, because you know what, public sentiment right now, people are very afraid about an all-out war with Iran.
I'm a tad more cynical than that, though, because I feel like there's a lot of sensationalist outrage towards Trump's actions with Iran, and it's very much like the climate stuff from last year.
You didn't fill out the proper paperwork to assassinate
exactly. And what ends up happening is you see fake outrage, like when Obama said he was against the Iraq war, and we're still in Iraq today. So I think it's that. And so we have to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of trusting people who haven't been principled their whole life. And there's only two. I think Bernie and Tulsi are the only two candidates really that were actually against war from the beginning. They've been talking about it since the beginning. And Warren voted for the military budgets. Buttigieg has supported troops on the ground in Syria since the beginning of the campaign. And then Biden voted for the Iraq war. So I really think the Democratic Party needs to improve on its foreign policy actions. I mean, we had 8 years of, increasing our amounts of war when Democrats had full control of government.
Well, I mean, the other aspect is also let's be clear about what happened. We escalated tensions with Iran. President Numbnuts escalated tensions with Iran by getting us out of the nuclear deal, putting more sanctions on Iran, doing more CIA military interventions, using escalating drone strikes up to 400%. These things are those are the things that we can control to try to that. When it comes to us wanting to make peace in the Middle East, especially with Iran and other things, you don't murder someone who was on a peace deal that was trying to do a peace deal between Iran and one of our other allies, which is Saudi Arabia. And I mean,
yeah,
like
people also,
I mean,
the media is not reporting the facts on this. Also, like the fact that the guy was on a peace deal, the fact that this guy was just fighting with us against ISIS, and also, I've talked to people who know people in the military, and they've been planning their troop deployment to Iraq. Trump sent 3,500 troops to Iraq after this, to increase our presence in the region. And they've been planning this for 6 months. This assassination was already being planned when we were still allies with this guy, and this is how the U.S. treats our allies. So when U.S. tells countries put away your nukes or whatnot, they're not going to listen to us, because look at what we did with Libya, for example. We took away their chemical weapons. We still overthrew their government, and, Hillary Clinton bragged about, sticking like a stick through that guy's, through Gaddafi's butt. It's horrible, like what we do to even our friends, in the Middle East.
The thing is, good point, very good points. And the other thing that I would want to add to that is, when you saw on the debate stage, first of all, this is actually, I'm going to give credit to CNN. The first 45 minutes being on foreign policy.
That surprised me. Yeah, good for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because when it comes to the power, when it comes to what the president can do, foreign policy and the way that we negotiate with other countries, is something that the president has a heavy influence in. And seeing how these candidates will deal with that is very important to me, and that was one of the reasons why, like when I had a chance to first vote, and one of my first votes I ever did was with President Obama. That was the main reason why I voted for him over Hillary, way back in the day, because his policies was less hawkish. So that was one thing that I could say that was actually good about the debate.
The debate, I think they really missed Tulsi. This is like the debate they actually talked about foreign policy, and she'd been ripping Mayor Pete to shreds on Syria earlier in the cycle, and she'd been talking about Iran since the beginning. And
I forgot, did she qualify or did she choose not?
No, she didn't.
No, she didn't qualify.
She's been backing Bernie on a lot of tweets on. I think that she's gonna be endorsing him pretty soon.
I mean, the whole lineup is starting to prune down.
I mean, she's been giving hints, liking some of his Nina Turner and Bernie's
she supported him before. She stepped down from leadership.
She's national security advisor. I have other disagreements with her, but if she's
I disagree with that.
Really? I don't know.
The reason
it's got a lot of stuff in her.
No. The fact that she was a strong third or fourth for me when it came to people who I liked, but the fact that she's still cool with Orange Modi, that's a problem for me.
By the way, side note, The Nation just did a really good article, very extensive article about the crisis of Hindu fascism in India.
Yeah,
and it'll make you be like, oh my god.
Right, and the fact that Tulsi seems like she's cool with that is like
she's denounced it though, whenever she's asked about it, and she gets asked about it because she's Hindu. So how is that any different than?
No. I don't.
Well, she gets asked about it because her family's from the area, right?
No, it's not that.
they don't ask Obama was a big Modi supporter at first as well.
I had a problem with that too.
Well, yeah,
like, you know what I'm saying?
Everyone was, but her position on it is the reason her position on it isn't. I support Bernie obviously, and I want her. I feel bad that the media has absolutely demolished her as a candidate though. And now they switched to Bernie now. No, it's a disaster.
So let me. I'm gonna let you speak. Let me phrase it part. But the critiques I have of Tulsi are substantive things. So for example, her backing out for Medicare for all was a problem.
Yeah, that was a problem.
Was a problem for me. I agree with the fact that she wants to get out of these regime change wars, but when it came to denouncing people who want to be a part of BDS, her and Ro Khanna also voted for that legislation, which was also a problem. You're infringing on the free speech rights of Americans.
No, I totally agree.
You know what I'm saying?
There.
So I'm like,
she was my second favorite candidate from day one. You know. And
I'm like Tulsi, I like you, but bro.
Well, what I'm saying is that when it comes down to it, Tulsi's the true ally of Bernie. Yeah. Whereas Warren, when it comes down to it, I think she's still her heart's in the right place on.
I think Warren's still an ally.
I think her heart's in the right place on some issues, but I think Warren will go for her own political career instead of what's right at sometimes because I think Warren just deep down is a politician.
I mean. In my opinion, and this is my thing when it comes to like the whole handshake thing that happened at the end and things of that nature, I think what that was, and we have to remember this, that our politicians are humans like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, I think Warren was having a very human moment of, dog, I got really hurt when this happened and and homie, we're supposed to be friends. Like, what's good? I feel like we forget that these politicians are still human beings and sometimes they will have reactions that are more emotional than logical.
I'd like to argue whether or not Pete Buttigieg is a human being.
He's a robot. He's a robot.
For sure.
I believe the term.
He's a talking
I think he's human. I think he identifies though as LGBTQIA.
Yeah, that's definitely what he is. But we can talk all day about the differences between very specific candidates, like we've been talking about Tulsi for the past few minutes. But really, at the end of the day, and I've been saying this since the beginning, but especially right now, especially since it's really everything's coming down to Biden, Buttigieg, and Bernie.
And maybe Warren and Bloomberg.
Okay, before we.
I wouldn't ignore Bloomberg because he's spent $120 million in his.
Okay.
He's horrible, but
One second. Doc, okay, I just want to note for the record, Bloomberg and Steyer has spent more money on ads than what it would take to fix the pipes in Flint. Think about that. Think about. No, I want everybody to think about that. Yeah. Bloomberg has spent almost 200 mil or close to 200 mil. He spent 150 something, and Steyer's
broke 100.
No, yeah, he broke 100. And how much did Michael Moore say it would cost to fix Flint water pipes? 55 mil.
Something like that.
But pay for these things, guys. How are we gonna pay for it?
These guys have all this spare money laying around. That's how we're gonna pay for it.
This whole race is not about actual altruism to any of these people except for Bernie. And also, like I was saying earlier, we can talk all day about these other candidates, but really, if you are in this, if you're participating in politics to actually better the lives of human beings, you should only be supporting Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
That's it. And these discussions about other people like Tulsi
Yang
and all this stuff, and especially Yang.
Yeah, Yang.
But
y'all got problems with Yang?
Yang is
not a big fan.
Yang, okay. In my personal opinion, Yang is the Ron Paul of Democrats in the sense that he is the libertarian of Democrats, and now
he's great on some issues. Have more ideology than Yang.
No. Here's the thing. So, for example, there are things that, again, full disclosure, there's things that I like about Yang. There's things that I have very strong disagreements about. I like the fact that he outflanked Bernie when it comes to decriminalizing drugs.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah. He out like because he so I'm like, yes, that's absolutely true. Him as a negative, him using the framework of saying Medicare for all, but not actually supporting Medicare for all is garbage. And
that was like Mayor Pete / Warren level sleep.
Yeah. And on top of the fact that his UBI, when you break it down and actually on a substantive level, it's the same type of UBI that Nixon wanted. So, and it's not universal.
And Milton Friedman,
But here's the problem. It's not universal if you're saying people who are on food stamps can't get it.
I have 2 points about Yang, and first of all about his UBI, and this is coming from Fred Hampton talking about giving out funds to impoverished people. Is you can't just give out money and capital like this without also giving an education on why you're getting that capital, what you should be using that capital for, and you should not be using this to get a leg up on other people to also be extorting them. Like, you can't just have a whole bunch of mini capitalists running around with free money. And on the point of why I think Yang, like, we shouldn't be giving him any credence is up until Warren's, like, what Virtual Texas said is the dirtiest move so far in the election season, I agree with. But before that happened, I would say Yang had the dirtiest move where, I mean, he's been doing this since he's began running, where he's just been, like, repeatedly, like, he's been using his son as a tool, man. Like, he's like, every chance he gets, he's like, my son, who has autism, by the way, and it's like,
and also he did the thing where he gave away people money to like enter his little contest.
Right, and that's super slimy to begin with. But the most disgusting example of that was when he was at, I think it was a town hall, and this woman was talking about how she lost her son in a school shooting, and Yang started crying. And this is actually a moment people use to support Yang, but I would say it's the opposite, because Yang started crying and he said, I'm sorry, I was just imagining if that was my son. But he said that when he said it, he was like, I was imagining if that was my son. And through tears, he was like, who has autism. That is disgusting. I cannot stand that.
He's a marketing business guy. That's how they are. Here's
the thing.
I'm sorry.
I agree on half of that, what you just said. I do believe that he was Doc, I got nieces and nephews. You know what I'm saying? I got family members. If I thought one of my nieces and nephews, if I was to start thinking about one of my nieces and nephews in the school shooting, I'll cry too.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm not saying crying was the bad part, but like, you can't. He's literally defining his son through his disability.
Okay.
Like, come on.
I will admit,
that is nasty.
I do miss Yang on the stage.
That kid is going to school and everyone's like, oh yeah, you're Yang's son with autism. like that's it, man. There's no getting around it.
I do miss Yang though on the stage because I think Yang like makes fun of the debates though. Like Yang, he was like trashing the questions during the debates and like he's making a joke out of it. And
because
these debates are a joke.
No. It's because those questions were garbage.
I know. I totally agree with him on that.
Okay,
like Trump kind of does the same thing.
As someone who does, we're commentators. We are opinion commentators. But as someone who wanted to be a journalist, I'm thinking you went from journalism school to being an intern to working on a local station to finally getting to CNN or whatever and getting on that stage, and you are framing questions, literally are talking points from the insurance companies, the
industrial complex,
and from and basically from absolute right-wing perspectives that have already been debunked. And this is the reason why it made me upset with Warren. The question about can a woman become president is not a question that I want to hear if I'm a woman and it's 3 weeks before people start voting. That is from a political strategy perspective, that is horrible. That is a horrible
the movement for a woman to become president because
it
makes it like it's an oddity.
It absolutely.
In normal countries,
what shouldn't be a legitimate question.
What you just say it one more time so people in the back can hear it.
Elizabeth Warren is giving legitimacy to a question that should not even be legitimate to begin with.
Thank you. Because
I totally agree with that.
While we're focusing on those non-issues, what are we not focusing on?
Anything.
No. What we're not focusing on? We're not focusing on the fact that the planet is literally burning. Yeah. Australia's on fire. We have the Arctic was on fire. Like, you know what I'm saying? Raising the minimum wage to a living wage and tying it to inflation, canceling student loan debt, Medicare for all, getting money out of politics.
All of Bernie's talking points.
Yeah, Bernie. It sounds like the stuff that will help average Americans.
Yeah,
is what Bernie's.
It sounds like stuff that would help, not just average Americans, but also help women, people who are disenfranchised, people who are disabled.
Like Bernie's. Sorry.
I was going to make this point earlier when we were talking about. You said rightly that people are leveraging identity politics towards to actually hurt disenfranchised people, and Warren is a big example of that. And I think when you're thinking about any person who's running for president, the first thing you should look at if you want to know who they're actually going to help and who they're affecting is their support base. And Bernie has the most consistent and most devoted support base. I mean, all of his money is coming from these people, and he's lapping everyone else around him. And Warren's doing all these identity politics thing. She got that big cheer by saying oh yeah, the only people on the stage who have won, who have never lost an election are the women. But
here's the thing, and the thing that makes it a problem for me is that when you're using that to suck the oxygen out of the room, it undercuts the notion that Warren has been doing, which is basically saying, I'm the unity candidate.
Yeah, and she's literal opposite of that.
When she's doing but she's doing tactics that are divisive, that are divisive.
That's my point.
So that's and that's the thing that undercuts her entire strategy. Also, when you back off from progressive policies,
Medicare for all.
And I was just getting to that because Amy Klobuchar, AB Klobuchar, smacked her when she was like, "Yo, your two bill plan about Medicare for all has you wanting to put in a public option. So you've conceded to our notion. You've given ammunition to a person who's been trying to shoot at you this entire time when it comes to Medicare for all because of you." Because of your rollout of your healthcare policy.
Think about what Trump's going to do that.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was my next point. If she's upset with what Bernie said, and she's been having, and she's getting frustrated with Klobuchar and what Buttigieg has said, Trump is a sexist. He is a misogynist. He is a racist. He calls her Pocahontas. He calls her a racist slur. You know what I'm saying? So you think so? In my opinion, what that showed and what that's been showing is that Warren is not going to be able to take those hits in stride and
Bernie's
keep it moving.
Gotten almost a heart attack during the debate cycle, and he's gotten up from that. He takes every hit.
So I want to take a moment to just poop in everyone's cereal.
This guy.
All right. So
this guy.
This is something I was thinking about a lot over the last couple of days. All this has been going on. First with the Slack story, and then this story that dropped about their private conversation. So
I want to talk about that.
I really love the point. I was going to make this point, but you said it more eloquently than I could about how we really need to keep our eye on the ball. Warren, to her discredit, fed into that. The media likes these kinds of stories. It's very dramatic, soap opera-y, opera-y, blah blah. I will say, nobody's going to know what that conversation is like in that room. I think it's even kind of a waste of time to even try to speculate. It's at this point like a he said, she said type deal. But I wanted to bring it home to everybody. We understand, these are essentially the two best choices we have in this election. But don't make sure electoralism is not your North Star, because right now, my Facebook feed is just full of people who are just oh, Warren's a traitor, and some other people are like, well, Bernie's a misogynist, da, da, da. And I'm thinking back to about a year and a half ago, both Warren and Bernie voted for the FOSTA-SESTA Act. So like while we're having like this very meaningless conversation
Facts.
about like, you know, what did Bernie mean when he's analyzing like a woman becoming president? Did she take it the wrong way? Did she take it the right way? Blah blah blah. Well, both of y'all threw a lot of women under the bus, like concretely, tangibly, like about a year and a half ago. Like people were like in danger. People were losing their sources of income. To this point, I haven't heard either of them actually address it. I think maybe Ro Khanna did, but not in his capacity as
Ro Khanna addressed it when he went on the Young Turks.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about again media bias in CNN. The person who broke the story on CNN is the same person a year ago that gave the most glowing fluff piece about Elizabeth Warren on CNN. That's how it works. It's maintaining that access. I'm going to give you this wonderful fluff piece, so when you want to drop bombs on people, you can come to me and I can say that it's a breaking news story and that we've been working on this story for how many years. That's how it works in media. We know this. But at the same time, think about how that laid out. You had 4 people who were not in the conversation. 2 of them talked to Warren. 2 of them heard about the conversation from a third party. Think about that under any other context. If I went on CNN and said, Jake Tapper, I heard from 4 people that were not in the conversation, 2 people that talked to your wife and 2 people that heard about the conversation that happened to your wife, that I heard that your wife's mouth skills are so good that she can suck cold peanut butter through a Capri Sun straw. So like would anybody be like, oh man, that was a really reputable story? That is a real report.
I'm pretty sure
like
that there are elementary school cafeterias that need better vetting for their sources.
I'm like, right, and I'm sitting here like,
how many rows down did that rumor come from? The
right.
Chad having a crush on Becky? No, that's not reputable.
Right,
like,
you know what I'm saying?
Like 5 different ears.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, so when cause we talk about the media, and the media bias, and we always talk about how we give our perspective. This is coming from a progressive perspective, but at the same time, if I'm vetting a story, and the 4 people who are the anonymous sources weren't even in the room. They didn't hear it. So everything that's coming out is just he says, she says speculation. But this also goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the question. You ask Bernie, why did you say that? Bernie says, I didn't say that. And then you turn around and ask Warren, how do you feel when he said it? Like, I didn't say it. So the whole, and again, that goes back to, again, we laugh because we keep from being angry.
Real life is in satire.
Dog, that's the thing. I'm like,
it's funnier than satire.
Dog, and that's the thing. I'm like, no one knows that he said it, but you, the journalists, are going to be the voice of God right now and ordain that he said it when he's claiming that he didn't. Now, I understand that we have we have to believe women and we believe women's allegations, and I understand the whole woke identity politics of our time. But this is what happens when you weaponize sexism against someone who's not sexist in comparison to other people that were on that stage, and also the person that you're running against, which will be the president.
Yeah, I mean, as you brought up, I can't remember, one of you guys brought up earlier, Joe Biden has literally said things way worse than that out loud in public at rallies.
Literally in the past week.
Literally in the past week. You know what I'm saying? So this is my final thought on it. When it comes to the aftermath of this debate, even with Warren not shaking Bernie's hand at the end of the thing, which looks really bad for our movement, this goes back to another question that I wanted to bring up as a discussion. Would it be smart if Bernie gets the nomination to have Warren as his VP?
No way.
Let me explain why. Let me explain why. It is as real as a heart attack that Warren has between 15 to around 19% of the delegates in this race. That you cannot deny that. But there's also no denying that Bernie has about 20 plus. If you put those coalitions together, and I'm not saying that their coalitions are monoliths. I'm not saying that at all. But if you put those coalitions together, that's between 30 to 40%. You cannot deny that's not worth having that conversation.
You have to look at how the states work with like the math behind the primary. Most states need 15% to get any delegates. There's a good chance that most of the southern states, the only two candidates that get delegates are Bernie and Biden.
Yeah, sure.
I think the strategy for Bernie needs to be to turn this into a two-way race between him and Biden. That's the way that you win, and so that's why I think people like Tulsi need to drop out if they're Bernie allies, and I think Yang too, and the closer it gets to a two-way race is the better success, and so that's why Bernie needs to do great in Iowa, New Hampshire, California, and even Nevada.
Well, okay,
because he can in South Carolina. Let's say Bernie gets 15% and Biden gets 30%, and then no one else gets above 15. Bernie will get 1/3 of the delegates there before super delegates and all that jazz.
Before Super Tuesday, yeah. I'm not saying that. I agree with a lot of that analysis, but Bernie overperforms when it comes to caucuses. Mm-hmm. Iowa's a caucus. Now, when it comes to open primaries like Michigan, Bernie overperforms. Mm-hmm. When it came to closed primaries like New York, he underperformed. Those are the facts. Yep. So Nevada, Iowa, New Hampshire, those are going to be good places for Bernie. South Carolina is going to be tough. South Carolina's going to be tough.
If he gets 15%, he gets 1/3 of the delegates.
Yeah.
Because they get split between all the candidates that give above 15. So the way the math works out, he can just be Biden gets most of the delegates in the South. Bernie gets some of them, and then Bernie wipes the slate on the Rust Belt and out west. He might be able to get the nomination before super delegates are added in.
But it goes back to my original question. Now, in my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, I think Bernie needs to have Warren in his administration. I think Bernie needs to have her as Secretary of Treasury.
Okay, I can agree. I can accept that.
But because I personally believe that Nina Turner needs to be his.
I know. I totally agree with it. She's great. Yeah.
My evidence for this: after the debate last night, in the spin room, a reporter went and talked to Nina about a conversation about can a woman become president, and the last person to beat a Republican was her 30 years ago. Nina's response to the reporter was, Bernie beat a Republican 30 years ago, and 30 years ago, Warren was a Republican.
Yeah,
I was like, kidney shots. My ribs.
Nina Turner. Imagine Nina Turner against Mike Pence in a debate.
That would be ungodly.
Yeah.
She's bringing the wrath of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely hit on one of the points I was going to bring up, that Warren was literally used to be a Republican. But on the note of Bernie and Warren working together, I think a very important thing to make note of is the fact that Bernie is a democratic socialist, and I a lot of people shy away from saying that for one reason or another. But I think we need to be really vocal and proud of the fact that he's a democratic socialist. I mean, the fact that he's gotten so far says a lot. But Warren is a capitalist, proud capitalist, and she is against a lot of what Bernie's pushing, and right from the get-go, and we've been talking about this since 2016, if Bernie were to get in office, he would have a hell of a time getting through anything that he wants to, because everyone, Democrats, Republicans alike, they will join forces to stop whatever he wants to do, because at the base, he's a democratic socialist and he has different ideas than them. And if he has Warren in his cabinet, or worse, as VP, that will be like sawing off one of his own legs, because he has to deal internal struggle, and also everyone else who's going to be fighting him already.
I disagree with that framing on some parts. Warren differs on degrees. So they both agree that we need to go to Medicare for all. Yes, they have different ways of getting there. No. Let me explain. Because even though Warren's plan is clunky, and it's absolutely clunky, we ripped it apart when we.
But it's also
no. It's The first half of it, 100%. The first of the two plans is not Medicare for all as a public option. The second plan, when you read it, is Medicare for all. The thing is, and this is the problem, you're not going to be able to implement a public option first, and then in your third year, as you're trying to regain this, on that offshoot election, you're trying to push in another legislation for Medicare for all. That is absolutely clunky, and that is absolutely
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
it's not.
And I think
from a
Warren knows
strategy.
that, though. It's on purpose, though. Like-
From a strategy perspective. From a strategy perspective, I absolutely agree. I don't think it's going to work. But from reading the plan, yes, her plan is Medicare for all, but it is not as clear or concise as Pramila Jayapal's or Bernie's. And that's facts. That's the facts of it.
So I just wanted to kind of leapfrog off of the whole strategy thing. And here's the thing. The double-edged sword about, these big transformative plans like Medicare for all, and I guess it's only like a double-edged sword depending on how you look at it, but you can't do like an incremental version of it like Warren is proposing, and the reason for that is it's not even necessarily because it won't work, but because the kind of grassroots pressure you're going to need to get something like Medicare for all.
That's true.
Like if you aren't coming with the full package, like it's like how are you going to get like a literal like grassroots resistance calcified around Medicare for all eventually? No, to get people in the streets, rattling their Congress people and their senators to make this actually happen, you have to come out strong and be like, here's the plan, and right now I do not have the congressional support to do this, so y'all gotta hit the streets.
That's why I think Bernie's like.
Right. I was gonna say I 100% agree with all of that, and we can't afford to lose steam. And also, with the point that we're at now, with like global warming, and just the point in history that we're at, it's socialism or barbarism. We don't have time to be playing these games. I used to way back in my naive days. I was
y'all Gen Zers like back when I was a liberal.
Basically, but I was like, you know what, Warren, she's a good second choice. But the fact of the matter is, like, we don't have time for the shit she's talking about. Sorry if I, but we like this incremental plan.
Just no cussing.
Okay, sorry. This incremental plan. Not only will it not work, it won't work in time, and none of the changes that she's talking about, no matter if it's like on the Bernie level, it's delayed, and we don't have time for a delay, and that's another reason that Bernie is the only person that you should be supporting.
Totally.
I agree. No, I agree. I agree with that. The problem, the thing is that we're gonna need people who are that's in his cabinet that's almost as progressive or more progressive than him. This is the reason why I advocate for Nina Turner, because she is more progressive than him on multiple issues. The thing is that he's going to need to be surrounded. If he's not surrounded by other like-minded people who are like-minded progressives, maybe people who are not as far left as him, like Warren is not as far left as him, then the alternative is what? He's gonna put in
Amy Klobuchar.
Right. Like he's gonna put in other centrists? No. And like I don't think that. Like I think that his he's gonna have Dr. Cornel West in there at some point. I think that he's gonna definitely have Breonna Joy Gray as his press secretary. Like I think that there's a lot of infrastructure that he's gonna have with people who are like-minded progressive. The thing is that I'm saying is that as much as we are going to need him to be a progressive and movement-based president, he also needs to have those people in his cabinets as well, pushing and making forth that those agendas are being pushed as well.
I totally agree with that. But I think the one thing that the overall reason why Bernie needs to be in the White House is because of the fact that he will be at the forefront of leading movements of social change. Like he'll stand with like picketing, union workers.
He literally did.
Yeah, I know.
He literally did.
And there's a chance that Republicans, they're even worse than the Democrats in terms of like blocking stuff that helps people. And so it's going to be about us to keep going and keep the fight going, even when he gets in office, because that's just part of, the first step. The American political system is broken, and we can't achieve anything through it. So we can't achieve everything through it. So
yeah, I strongly agree, especially on the point that like everyone who's a Bernie supporter, it's important to know that when Bernie gets elected, the struggle has just begun. Mm-hmm. That's when the real work begins. That's when our ground game needs to be in peak form. Bernie getting elected is not Bernie getting elected is not the end game.
Yes.
Without our continued support, nothing that he wants to do will get through, and that's just a fact. So keep up your energies until way after the election. Don't call yourself a socialist just during this time that Bernie's running. Stick up for that. And keep fighting.
Billionaire class is at like the top of the hill. A bunch of portals open up, and just somebody comes out the front. Workers assemble!
Nah. You gotta start doing the Wakanda chant, dog. All right, wait. Okay. So speaking of on that note that you were talking about, Democrats and Republicans fighting against progressives. This is a story that I do want to talk about, but I know we gotta go to a break real quick, just for a hot second. But the story of the head of the DCCC admitting.
Oh yeah. Do you guys want to stick around and talk about that? We're talking about the recent AOC story that we're gonna dig into.
Doc, we gotta talk about this.
Yeah.
We gotta talk about this and the hypocrisy of it. Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're gonna take a quick little break. Message from our dear beloved radio station here. Y'all listen to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
WIDR means personality, and we've got
More music.
Depression can take many forms. It can feel like static in your brain, or as if everything around you has lost meaning. It can debilitate even the strongest of people. 89.1 WIDR is here to tell you that there is help and a way to improve mental health. WMU offers counseling for all students in the greater Kalamazoo community at Syracuse Health Center. There is no need for an appointment for first-time visits. Open counseling times are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Syracuse is located at 1903 West Michigan Avenue, Kalamazoo. For more information, please call 269-387-3287 or visit www.wmich.edu/health center.
Hello, everyone. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. So while we got our local DSA folks on, we're going to talk some more kind of national politics stuff and a few local things. But I at least want to do some quick hits about some stuff going on at the local level. And we'll kind of try to keep it under 5 minutes or so. But one thing I really wanted to touch on, so I want to give props, Dana Nacelle. Again, she is bringing litigation against several polluters over PFAS contamination. I suggest everybody read this. This is an article from the Detroit Free Press. And she is filing suit against 3M, DuPont, and 15 other companies on accusations of contaminating the state with dangerous PFAS chemicals. Both the governor and Attorney General Dana Nessel announced the suit. Companies that are responsible for these contaminants must be held accountable, Whitmer said. Polluters must pay. It's time that these companies step up and take responsibility and address what has taken place. So that's some good news going on at the state level. Yep. Oh, yeah. And then I also wanted to give props to everybody who turned out at the zoning meeting, at the city commission meeting yesterday. If y'all didn't know what was going on, this should be near and dear to the student population's heart as well. They were talking about rezoning a chunk of the Asylum Lake Preserve, specifically around the corner of Drake and Stadium, for the use of a very large industrial scale car wash. Now, obviously, people in Kalamazoo, I've made my criticisms about people don't focus on economics enough, or we're socially Bernie Sanders but economically Ronald Reagan. But when the rubber hits the road, people care about green spaces. It was max capacity overload, and public pressure worked. The zoning commission has recommended that they not build a car wash at that site. And that's the final decision going to be made by the city commission, but I'd say it's extremely unlikely that they would vote against the recommendation of the people and the zoning commission. So big win for grassroots organizing and preserving the preserve. And I also wanted to bring up, so I'm not going to go fully into it. There's a good article, Deadline Detroit, about a Facebook group that is facilitating a lot of right-wing extremism. I'll probably link to that in the comments when we publish this. And then the other story I want to hit up on is the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission is getting a $10 million upgrade. But a cautious A. I got to do a little bit of my little critique here. My critique here, with the Gospel Mission. So, people listening to us talk about the Gospel Mission on the show before hasn't always been glowing praise. They do some good work, but at the same time, a lot of complaints about conditions, discrimination, just a lot of the philosophies. There's a really cringeworthy quote from this article, and I'll just read it directly. Let me find it real quick. So there's a point in the article where they talk about there's a 90-day limit to guests in shelter, and what Simpson had to say. There's been a recent push to get guests involved in these programs, including updated policy limiting individuals to 90 days at a time with the emergency. We do not support or endorse chronic homelessness. As if I don't know who's rooting for chronic homelessness, but I think it really pushes that whole narrative that homeless people want to be homeless or some nonsense like that.
It's a bad look when the whole idea is that you're trying to help people back on their feet. You're forgetting the fact that sometimes those projects are going to take a little bit longer. So to say that, or to even have that thought, is very counterproductive. If your mission is to help people, then you need to help people. But that also means you need to be putting in structures for these people to maintain a job, help them transition into a house or an apartment that they can afford to stay in. Making sure that they have they're able to get transportation to said and from work. Making sure that these people have food. Making sure that their kids can get somewhere, because some of these people have kids. Right, yeah. If there's substance abuse issues, there are layers to this problem. If they have mental issues, again, there are layers to this problem. That I think that if you're only concerned about chronic homelessness, that you are missing in the discussion, and it's upsetting, because if your whole idea of the gospel mission, and I'm saying this as someone who's a Christian, Jesus wouldn't have said that. Jesus, it goes back to that old parable that Jesus said about when he separated the believers from the fake Christians from the real Christians, and it was the parable between the sheep and the goats. And he said, I want to thank the sheep. Because when I was homeless, you fed me. When I was homeless, you gave me a place to stay. When I was in jail, you didn't forget me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was sick, you took care of me. and the goats, you pretend you said that you were the goats, you claimed that you were going to do these things and you never did.
So I wanted to like just clarify the whole discrimination thing. It's related to LGBTQ issues.
Yeah.
And it would be like if Jesus came into the village and was like, "Oh, you are hungry, so I will feed you." Wait, y'all ain't gay, are you?
Right. So, and that's, but that also goes back to my point, and the other part of the parable, because the people that Jesus was talking to, some of the fake Christians were like, some of the fake people that didn't understand. He was like, how can we be a part of this? And Jesus said, if you don't do it for the meekest among you, then you don't do it of me.
Right.
And that goes back to that basic point. Jesus in the Bible, Jesus never talked about homosexuality. He never talked about. He never made lepers pay co-pays. He never, when the woman that had the bleeding issue, he didn't make her pay a deductible first. Like, Jesus got angry that people were misrepresenting his misrepresenting the religion, that he literally walked into a table and flipped over the money tables of the people that were in the temple, and then chased out their cows so they to be like, y'all are misrepresenting what we believe in. And this is coming from a brown skinned Middle Eastern Jew. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it bothers me when I see other Christians misrepresent my religion and try to claim that they're doing the work of God when you're hurting the people that you're supposed to be helping.
Yeah, and just another thing the Bible doesn't look well on is lying. I believe that's one of the big seven. And they lied in this article, and I did want to point this out real quick before we move on to the next story. In the article, they say they have a policy of not turning anyone away. That is categorically false. At least it was as of November 1st, I believe it was. I'm going to tell a quick story. It was the weekend before the election. Me and some campaign volunteers were tabling at a show at Shakespeare's, and there was a homeless gentleman out behind, kind of by the railroad tracks after the show that we encountered, and he's just in real, he'd been walking literally all day. Like, I could tell his footwear was like, he was in incredible pain. He was dealing with some diabetic issues, etc. Now, even at the time, I was like, I don't think the mission's going to take him late at night, and I was right. It was about 12 o'clock, and I asked, it's like, there's this guy, he's out cold, and it was very cold around Halloween, if y'all remember. And he's in pain, he needs even just like entry or something. And they're like, we cannot take him unless he has a doctor's note. How many houseless people, got good health insurance? It's just a side. But at least up until then, they were still I don't know if maybe things changed in the last couple months, but up to that point, they were turning people away. So, with that, let's, unless we got any other comments on that story, we can move on to DCCC stuff. But all right. Okay, so Lawrence, I'll let you lead off on this, and then we still got the DSA crew here. We'll kind of dive into some of the politics associated with this story.
Okay, so this particular story talks about the head of the DCCC. The head of the DCCC, Cheryl Busto, was on CNN, and shout out to the Majority Report. The Majority Report did a fantastic commentary on this, and I want to give context. The reason why they're having this conversation on CNN is because AOC is refusing to pay her dues to the DCCC. For those who don't understand what the DCCC does, they take money from the congressional. They take money from from Congress, and they give it to Democrats who are incumbents to make sure they keep their seat. They despise people like AOC because AOC defeated the incumbent that they were giving money to. And now they're saying, hey, you're an incumbent. You need to give us money so we can give that money to people like not you, that we don't want here anyway, that's not going to take part of the corruption. They are the literal definition of the legalized bribery that we have in this country. AOC has said, no, I'm not going to do that. Why would I give you money to support Democrats that do not support my policies? Why would I give you money to support Democrats that are literally Republicans? So no, I'm not going to do this. And then what she has done is chosen to raise money and give money that she chooses to people who she supports. So Sheriff Busso, and at the same time, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring up the story, at the same time, AOC is outraised, the show that AOC outraised anybody else when it came to Congress on raising money. And she's doing it with small money donations. She's not taking super PAC money or corporate PAC money. She's walking it like she talks it. And this is the DCCC. The DCCC who said that if you are a vendor, or if you are someone who works against an incumbent, that we will blacklist you. This is the same DCCC who is okay with other Democrats who are basically doing the same thing, like Dan Lipinski, doing the same thing that AOC is doing, but because he doesn't give money to pro-choice Democrats, which is the majority of Democrats. But she says if you primary Dan Lipinski and you work with the person who's primary Dan Lipinski, we will blacklist you from us working with you. She went on CNN, and I don't know if you can pull it up. She went on CNN, and the anchor asked, "Is AOC good for the party?" She refused to say it. She refused to say that she's good for the party. She refused to even acknowledge AOC's existence.
Straight up got asked like 3 times consecutively by the reporter, and not only did she like dodge the question entirely, but she didn't even mention AOC in any of her responses. She was like, "Yeah, I support the Democrats, and we have a very diverse coalition, and that's about it." And also, on your earlier point about why would she give away this money to people who like want her out, like why would you expect her to give you money that she has gotten from her constituents that like are donating money like her at her fundraising events for AOC? This money is to support AOC. That's where these people think the money is going to. Why would they expect her to stab her constituents in the back and give away this money to an entity that wants to harm AOC, the very person who they're giving money to?
It's not just, and again, it's not just AOC. You gotta also think about Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley. You also gotta think about Ro Khanna and the other Justice Democrats are also in Congress. They don't like any of them. They don't like any of them. The reason why is because they're walk it like they talk it. Like, and also remember, folks, before the Justice Democrats, Progressive Change Caucus, Our Revolution, before these people started, before these organizations came, there was only 4 people that did not take corporate PAC money or super PAC money that's in Congress. Now it's over 40.
Yep, and really what
now it's over 40.
A ghost is haunting the chambers of Congress.
Yeah,
and just like put a couple of
the ghost of change.
Yeah, well, ghost is like the change back. Because like even if I'm observing these issues from like, oh, I'm radical left, like I want actual socialism, blah blah blah. It is still heartening to understand like that what the Democratic Party, the elites in the Democratic Party are so angry about and so mad about is that these newcomers are, they're basically dragging the party back to the kind of party it was, particularly before the 70s, and you had Buckley Viglio, et cetera, where there was a sense of like economic populism. Now you go too far back, and the Democrats were racist AF. But
we're talking about no, they were still racist under FDR, but they were
the Dixiecrats or
no, like
KKK Democrats.
FDR. The New Deal regulation was good for white Americans. I mean, black people still didn't have a right to vote at that time.
Also,
right,
internment camps.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like let's like Japanese internment camps like that. There's a period like there was a lot of progressive change that FDR did. That's absolutely 100% a good thing. The type of democratic socialism that I particularly stand with is very similar to what Martin Luther King talked about, which is, you know what I'm saying, Martin Luther King also talked about universal basic income. He talked about universal housing. He talked about Medicare for all.
Talked about ending the wars.
He talked about ending the wars. You know what I'm saying? He was on his way to march with the sanitation workers when he was murdered. So again, he walked it like he talked it. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with X. Like X was post Mecca X. Pre-Mecca X. Pre-Mecca X is a different conversation. Post Mecca X. But the point that I'm trying to get at, especially with this story, is that when we talk about, though, earlier when we were talking about the Democratic Party and how centrist Democrats will also fight progressives, and this is why I'll talk about the Bernie coalition, the Warren coalition. We need to get our stuff together, because these are the people who are still in power that will fight against what we want. Dana Ness, the people like not Dana Nessel, but the head of the DCCC. You can put Tom Perez in that category as well. You can put Nancy Pelosi also in part of that category as well, because she's blatantly come out and said she's against Medicare for all. She's against the Green New Deal. She definitely will be against canceling student loan debt. And nobody's talked about the fact that it was Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton who agreed with the banking regulation that students could not get rid of their student loan debt. Even though President Joffrey can go bankrupt 6 times, but students right now, there are over 1 million students in America that have student loan debt that's over $100K, and that is directly tied to the banking regulation. So again, we as progressives, if you call yourself democratic socialists or people who like social democracy, or people who are just on the left, we cannot get bogged down by BS catfighting that the media want to bring up, because people like Biden, Buttigieg, the head of the DCCC, and others are still the ones controlling the levers of power.
I think
in the Democrat, when it comes to the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't be
speaking to Mike.
I think we shouldn't be going so hard on Warren with this stuff lately. I mean, but we need to be going after her on like policy and stuff that matters. You know, I would rather, you know, Bernie hasn't brought up her flip-flop on Medicare for all. I would like him to, you know. I think he's too quick to call Biden his friend, you know.
Warren his friend. Joke, though, like, you know, it's like if you hear Bernie in a debate about to call someone his friend, you know, like, oh crap, he's about to tear, you know, Joe, my friend, I'm about to tear you a new way.
We need to acknowledge.
It was the same thing with Warren. It was the same thing with Warren. Hey, this is my friend. But let me acknowledge everybody that all these guys up here has lost 10 elections. I was like, geez, Warren, there's a lot of shade in this room. It got dark in the morning.
I think something that's important to note between Warren and Sanders is that, like, I think we're being we're giving too much credit to Warren when we call her a progressive. I think she's nicer than your average Democrat, but I think, like, to put her in a coalition with Bernie is way out there in my opinion. So I think Warren she's a little more establishment than a lot of people are giving her credit for.
She's more of a left liberal than a centrist progressive.
Yeah, you know,
she'd be in the left of the Liberal Party in like Canada or the UK.
You know, me and Lawrence were kind of talking about this at the beginning of the show, or before the show started, and we kind of described it as so Warren is like kind of what she would effectively be is. And it would be a change, but she would be effectively negotiating on behalf of the ruling class to the working class. Whereas Bernard, it's the opposite. He's negotiating on the behalf of the working class to the ruling elite.
Right.
You know, I think it is important too. And while I got a little like weary about all of like my Facebook feed was just full of like this Bernie versus Warren stuff like last couple days, but I think it is something important to be said that beyond just a policy difference, let's look at what happened in 2016. You had essentially, all the work she's done on like Wall Street and consumer protections. This would be somebody who was essentially aligned with all your values. Somebody who literally told you, I'm going to run if you don't. No endorsement, nothing like that. Completely quiet about the election until Hillary got the nomination. That kind of shows you how a politician is effectively going to govern and how they tactically operate. And that is definitely not how you would do that as a quote-unquote progressive.
I think it's more so a problem with like the U.S. system than Warren as like a person, because I don't want to sound like I'm just bashing her, saying that she's like a bad person. I think it's the way we do politics in this country, the way we have elections, how money works, how the media coverage works. This is just her having one more gasp of air to keep her dying campaign going, kind of.
And I hate to like say the same thing over and over again, but I feel like it can't be overstated. It's like we don't have time anymore for like quote unquote progressivism. Like we need to be behind Bernie because he is the one who's going to go all out. We can't do half measures anymore. Yeah. We're not at a point where we can afford that.
So many of the issues we deal with are zero-sum issues. It's like, half of nothing is still nothing. Half of an apocalypse, a slower apocalypse, is still an apocalypse.
Right. The Democratic Party has been doing compromises for hundreds of years, and like every time we make a compromise, I say we, I'm not part of that, but every time they make a compromise, it only makes things worse for the disenfranchised people because they fight like time after time. Is the most radical on the left who find themselves like with the disenfranchised, and they fight for this change that is radical, and then the Democratic Party will come in and be like, all right, well, let's be realistic about this. Like a bourgeois white person will come in and be like, you know what, black person, we should not go crazy. We should be reasonable, and like if you can take a few beatings, that's fine by me. And we can't be doing this anymore. Like that's what Warren is. Let's not sugarcoat it. That's what she's about. She's about a half measure. Like let Bernie's too radical. You guys want me because I'll let minorities keep getting killed and beat, and I'll only make minor changes that'll only affect a couple people. That's who Warren is.
Well, I think the best
that's a little bit more.
That's a little more than me. I will have to say that's a little much.
I think a more apt comparison is like Americans can have a little social safety net as a treat, but endless war, got to keep that going.
No. The thing is, no. When it comes to the tranquilizing drug of gradualism, that's definitely not Warren. Like Warren is not on that train as much as someone like a Mayor Pete or a Joe Biden. Like they are the moderate white person that Martin Luther King talked about in his letter from a Birmingham jail. Like Warren, again. When Bernie came out with his wealth tax, people were saying, again, we had discussed that it's a farther left policy than Warren's.
Much farther, yeah.
But what did the mainstream media focus on? They focused on Warren's.
Yep.
The reason why is because it wasn't because it's not as detailed, but her plan, again, would make Jeff Bezos and the others cry. And it literally did. It made billionaires go on mainstream media websites and cry.
I think one point that I think is true, though, is that like Warren's more so like a wolf in sheepskin clothing, kind of more so. And you don't see a lot of progressives falling into the trap of supporting Biden and Buttigieg.
Oh, no.
What you're seeing you see progressives supporting Warren, even though she's not the real deal. And you don't see that from, you don't see a lot of, you see most Biden and Buttigieg supporters are like 60-year-old white people.
No.
That's,
So here's the thing. This is my perspective. I agree. Bernie's definitely number one when it comes to people. When it comes to policy of what we want. In my opinion, the next best person that will cause less harm is Warren. After that, when it comes to when we are looking at the policy, does she want to cancel all student loan debt? No, but does she wants to cancel over 90%? Over 90%, and her plan was 94%. Yeah, that's still good. You know what I'm saying? In comparison to Mayor Pete and Andrew Yang and Biden, who doesn't want to do that at all.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So let's eyes on the prize. So again, that's the reason why I'm saying, if and that's the reason why I'm also saying, look at who's also going to be Speaker of the House. Look who's also going to be the leader in the Senate. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi also will have to get out of there too, because they don't support those policies either.
Yeah.
So again, it's not just a who's going to win the presidency and who that will. And again, I go back to what you were saying earlier. When Bernie wins, because I believe that Bernie's going to win. When he wins, we are still going to have to fight. That also means we're going to have to clean house.
Oh yeah.
and for everything I was saying earlier, I totally agree. Warren is second best.
Yeah.
Like I will be the first to say that. But really, Warren's a liberal. Like let's be straight up about that.
She said it herself. Capitalist to my bones.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to say Warren's a good liberal, Biden's a bad liberal. You know, you know, and then Bernie's
no. Biden's a Republican. Let's keep it real. Biden's a Republican. Like, if you saw, like, I don't know if any of y'all saw the video.
Well, didn't AOC recently say, like, almost dismissively, like,
she said that if we were
any other country, me and Joe Biden wouldn't be in the same political party.
Dog.
100%.
Yeah, no, it wasn't just. It's not just that. Outside of the video back in '94, not in '94. Outside the video back in the early '80s of him pushing the war on drugs policies from the right. From the right, trying to push Reagan even further right. Him working with Strom Thurmond. The video of him saying that he supported and would vote and continue to support the war in Iraq. But did you see that? Did you see that video from back in the day where? And here's the thing: him and John Kerry tries to spin this alternative history when the video is still on YouTube.
Finish point real quick. I totally agree with you, by the way. But on the Warren thing about her being a liberal, I just wanted to follow that up with the reason I bring that up is, and the reason that I'm so against Warren and capitulating to her is, like Malcolm X straight up said, liberals have the same goals and intents as conservatives. They're just dressing themselves up as a friend when they're really not. And I think for all Warren says and all the nice things, like I can honestly say some nice things about Warren.
Right. Yeah,
but
she said some good things about like free college.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying Warren is an Andrew Yang or a Pete Buttigieg, not a person. But the reason that we need to be behind Bernie and not behind her is because not only is it a half measure, but it's just she is that liberal who's like feeding you this line when she's not. Like she might make some incremental changes, but Bernie is the only one who's going to make lasting change, and lasting change is what we need.
So on that note, I think it's 8:00. I know we've got another DJ in the wings, so we should probably close out the show. But on that note, here's a brief clip of Jean-Luc Picard talking about liberals. Thank you, everybody. You can find our show on YouTube. There's a Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR. Until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.
It's ridiculous having to copy all this by hand. We should have it printed.
We could get help from one of the groups in the liberal movement.
No. Don't trust the liberals. They will betray you.
Then I'll ask Lydia.